The outer rim of the galaxy had always been a quiet and peaceful place. It was the kind of region most species almost forgot existed. Trade routes passed near it, small research stations floated in the emptiness, and a few colonies lived calm lives without worrying about wars or politics. Because nothing ever happened there, no one expected danger. That was why the first distress signal shocked everyone so deeply. At first, the message didn't even make sense. It came in broken pieces, half static, half terrified voices. Ships had gone missing. A patrol fleet had been torn apart. Sensors showed something moving too fast for known technology. But before anyone could understand what was happening, the signal ended. It didn't fade out or disconnect. It simply vanished, as if the station sending it had been erased from existence. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from dozens of species crowded around the table, exchanging anxious reports. More outposts had gone silent. A research vessel exploring a nearby nebula failed to check in. A caravan of trading ships disappeared without leaving a single distress beacon behind. There were no survivors, no wreckage, no clues, only the growing fear that something powerful was sweeping through the rim. Even the oldest species, those who claimed they had seen every kind of threat, had no answer. They reviewed old star maps, archives, and ancient warnings, but nothing matched what they were seeing. It felt like a new enemy had appeared out of nowhere, an enemy no one was prepared to fight. The coalition formed a defensive fleet and sent it to investigate. They expected resistance. They expected a battle. What they didn't expect was silence. The defensive fleet managed to send one last message before disappearing. It showed a cluster of metallic shapes moving like a storm, their surfaces glowing with cold energy. The shapes didn't look like ships. They looked like machines built purely for war. Then the signal ended, just like all the rest. Panic spread through the council. Species that had been peaceful for centuries suddenly pushed for military action. Some wanted to seal off the entire rim. Others demanded evacuation of nearby colonies. A few even suggested abandoning the region completely. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. They were outmatched. They had never seen an enemy fight like this before, and their fleets simply weren't strong enough. That was when the question no one wanted to ask finally surfaced. Who could face this enemy? Who was powerful enough, fast enough, and bold enough to step into a war zone everyone else feared? When the council sent out a universal request for support, most expected only a few symbolic responses. But one reply stood out immediately, and it came faster than anyone expected. Humanity accepted the request. The moment the message appeared on the council's main display, the entire chamber went silent. Humans were known for many things: courage, unpredictability, and a strange ability to survive situations that destroyed others. But what surprised everyone wasn't the acceptance itself. It was the speed. The humans didn't ask for extra details. They didn't demand supplies or political concessions. They simply sent a short message confirming that the Terran battle fleet would mobilize. The council members exchanged uneasy looks. Many of them had heard legends about the human fleet. Some believed the stories were exaggerated. Others believed they were carefully understated. The truth was that most species had never actually seen the full human military mobilize. Humans rarely used it, and when they did, they never spoke much about the results. Still, there was hope. If anyone could break through the unknown threat spreading across the outer rim, it was them. But hope didn't erase the fear. The council immediately contacted Earth to confirm. The human representative, calm and serious, explained that preparations were already underway. Crews were boarding their ships. Docks were activating launch platforms. The fleet would depart sooner than anyone expected. As soon as the message ended, the council activated secure observation channels to monitor Earth's movements. They wanted to understand what a human mobilization actually looked like. What they saw left them speechless. In the space around Earth, thousands of ships lit up at once, as if waking from a deep sleep. Armed cruisers, heavy carriers, escort vessels, and large command ships aligned with mathematical precision. Every movement was synchronized. There was no confusion, no delay, no hesitation. Human officers issued instructions confidently, and the crews followed with a discipline most species found hard to achieve. Watching the mobilization felt like witnessing something ancient, something human civilization had practiced and perfected over many generations. It didn't look rushed or chaotic. It looked rehearsed, as if they had trained for this exact scenario long before the council even called for help. What made the other species even more unsettled was that humanity didn't seem frightened. They didn't waste time with emotional speeches or dramatic messages. They simply prepared. Engineers checked every system. Pilots ran through simulations. Strategic officers analyzed reports, adjusting battle plans without a hint of panic. To the council, humanity seemed almost too calm. But those who understood humans knew the truth. Humans acted calm when they were focused, and they became focused when a threat appeared that endangered innocent lives. This was exactly the kind of situation that awakened their instinct to protect, to fight, and to push forward no matter the cost. Soon, the final stage began. Giant human carriers opened their hangars, and smaller ships launched one after another in perfect order. The sight was breathtaking. Engines flared like miniature suns. Navigation lights glowed softly in the darkness. The entire fleet moved toward a single point in space, forming a massive formation so exact that even advanced species felt a sense of awe. It was clear now why the humans had earned the reputation they carried. They weren't just strong. They were organized, determined, and united in a way the council rarely saw. As the fleet prepared to leave Earth's orbit, tracking stations picked up a final signal, a transmission from the human flagship. It was brief, steady, and confident. The commander simply declared that the Terran battle fleet was officially entering deployment phase and would reach the war zone as fast as possible. Then the engines ignited fully. The fleet jumped forward with such power that some observers instinctively leaned back as if they could feel the blast themselves. In seconds, the entire human armada vanished into the glowing tunnel of a hyperspace corridor, leaving Earth behind like a distant star. For a long moment, the council chamber remained silent. Every representative stared at the screen where the fleet had disappeared moments earlier. No one spoke because no one knew what to say. The humans hadn't asked for rewards. They hadn't demanded control. They hadn't even asked how dangerous the enemy was. They just went. Slowly, a realization spread across the room. The humans had chosen to enter a war zone every other species feared. They had seen the same terrifying signs, the same missing fleets, the same deadly reports. And yet, they didn't turn away. They did what they always did. They stepped forward. The council knew humanity was brave. They had seen humans explore dead planets, cross unstable wormholes, and stand firm in battles against overwhelming odds. But this was something deeper. This was commitment. This was responsibility. And it reminded every species why humanity had earned both respect and caution in equal measure. As the chamber lights dimmed and officials prepared to send updates to their home worlds, one unspoken thought lingered in the air. The unknown enemy had no idea what was coming for them. Humanity was now on the move, and when the Terran battle fleet entered the war zone, nothing would ever be the same again. The moment the human fleet entered hyperspace, life on Earth shifted into a completely different rhythm. It didn't matter if someone was a technician working in a station, a pilot, or a civilian on the ground. Every person knew the fleet was moving toward something dangerous. And because of that, everyone moved with a sense of purpose that felt almost electric. On board the ships, the atmosphere was focused and steady. Crew members were checking systems, recalibrating scanners, inspecting hull plates, running communication checks, and preparing for any possible situation. Even though no one knew exactly what the enemy looked like or how they fought, humans acted as if they had already imagined every possible scenario. That was simply how they operated. Every ship in the fleet had its own rhythm. Some sounded calm and quiet, with soft beeps from monitors and the faint hum of engines. Others were alive with conversations, planning, and the sound of equipment being tested again and again. No one complained, no one panicked, and no one treated the mission lightly. Everyone knew they were stepping into a conflict where other species had already fallen. That thought didn't scare them. It only made them more determined. The command officers reviewed the data the Galactic Council had sent, blurry recordings, fragmented transmissions, and visuals that didn't reveal much. The unknown enemy moved fast, hit hard, and left nothing behind. The enemy didn't communicate, didn't negotiate, and didn't show the slightest sign of hesitation. It was like fighting a storm silent, cold, and impossible to reason with. Humans had seen many threats before, but this enemy felt different. And still, the fleet didn't slow down. Inside the main command ship, large screens displayed the routes of previous coalition fleets that had vanished. Engineers studied the sensor readings and noticed something unusual. The enemy always struck in the same pattern: fast approach, precise targeting, no wasted movement. That told the humans something important. This enemy wasn't chaotic or emotional. It was calculating. That meant the humans needed to think even faster. Throughout the fleet, teams sat around holographic maps, analyzing the enemy's speed, reaction time, and possible weaknesses. There were no dramatic speeches or emotional scenes, just calm, focused effort. Humans worked best when they treated a mission like a puzzle that needed solving. And that was exactly what they were doing now. One thing became clear early on. The coalition fleets that had been destroyed were weak. They simply weren't prepared for the enemy's style of attack. The enemy moved like pure logic, without fear or hesitation. Coalition ships responded like they were fighting a normal opponent thinking. The enemy would retreat or communicate. But humans didn't make that assumption. They prepared for the worst. From the start, engineers upgraded shield timing so they could shift instantly. Tactical officers reprogrammed weapon cycles to fire in unpredictable patterns. Pilots practiced high-speed maneuvers designed for extreme situations. Humans didn't want to match the enemy. They wanted to outthink it. Even as the fleet traveled, the mood remained strangely steady. No one joked the way people sometimes did during long journeys. Instead, there was quiet determination. Humans were known for adapting quickly, but what made them powerful wasn't just their technology or bravery. It was their ability to work as a unit, each person understanding the importance of their role. Across the fleet, people trained in zero-gravity rooms, practiced emergency protocols, and reviewed mission details. Every small action added to the confidence growing silently inside the armada. They didn't know exactly what they were flying into, but they were certain of one thing: they wouldn't face it unprepared. Even the way humans communicated with each other impressed anyone who watched them. They talked clearly, gave precise instructions, and stayed respectful even under pressure. It wasn't because they were forced. It was because they trusted each other. That trust made them strong. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council monitored the fleet's progress from afar. Many representatives were surprised by how quickly the humans had mobilized. They expected hesitation or political debate, but humans had simply acted. For some species, this level of confidence was unsettling. For others, it was inspiring. The Council watched the fleet's formation shift gracefully in hyperspace, each ship moving as if connected by an invisible thread. Hours passed, and a day, then another. The fleet continued traveling toward the rim, where so many ships had disappeared. Every few hours, the fleet received brief updates from the Council, mostly warnings, sometimes new fragments of sensor data. But nothing changed humanity's pace or attitude. They knew the enemy was dangerous. They knew previous fleets had been wiped out, and yet they didn't slow down. While approaching the rim, the humans detected faint traces of old battle's energy signatures, floating like ghosts in space. It was the only sign left of the coalition ships that had fallen earlier. The sight was quiet and sad, but it didn't frighten anyone. Instead, it strengthened their resolve. The closer they got to the war zone, the more intense the preparations became. Officers held final briefings, explaining formation shifts, emergency retreats, and possible interaction patterns the enemy might follow. Crew members checked everything from communication nodes to oxygen levels. Pilots locked themselves into their seats, ran diagnostics, and waited for the moment they would be needed. Even the ship corridors were different now. People moved with purpose, their steps firm, their faces serious. No one wasted time. No one needed to be reminded why they were there. Every person understood that countless lives depended on this mission. As the fleet neared the edge of the war zone, sensors began picking up strange signal, short pulses of energy, like echoes of something moving far away. The readings didn't match any known design. The signals were too clean, too precise, too controlled. There was no emotion in them, no natural randomness. They looked like the patterns of a machine. The officers studied the signals and prepared strategies based on their movement. They didn't treat the enemy like a mystery. They treated it like a challenge. The moment humans realized the enemy didn't act like living beings, their approach changed completely. Instead of emotional or instinctive reactions, they planned responses based on timing, mathematics, and logic. Humans didn't fear something just because it was unfamiliar. They learned, adapted, and pushed forward. In the final hours before entering the war zone, a calm silence settled over the fleet. It wasn't the silence of fear, it was the silence of concentration. Every person knew what needed to be done. Every system was ready. Every ship was in perfect formation. The fleet slowed down as it approached the boundary, where the last coalition transmission had come from. It was like crossing an invisible line between safety and danger. But the humans didn't hesitate. Their engines dimmed, their weapons powered up, and their sensors reached out farther than ever. The war zone was waiting for them. The enemy was somewhere inside it. And humanity was ready. The fleet moved forward together, steady and fearless. In that moment, anyone watching would have understood why so many species respected humans and why some feared them. They weren't the strongest, they weren't the oldest, and they weren't the richest. But they had something. No other species had quite the same way. They had the determination to stand firm when others stepped back. They had the courage to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. And above all, they had the unity to face the unknown without losing hope. The humans were now at the edge of the war zone, prepared for whatever waited within. They didn't know what the enemy truly was yet, but they were ready to find out. When the human fleet finally crossed into the war zone, every ship's sensors lit up with strange readings. At first, the data looked like scattered noise, tiny flashes, sudden spikes, energy trails that appeared and vanished in the same second. It didn't follow any normal pattern. It was like the space around them was shivering. No one panicked. The crew simply watched the numbers rise, watched the unfamiliar signals scatter across their monitors, and tried to understand what they were dealing with. Humans had faced many strange sights across the galaxy, but this zone felt different. It didn't feel empty. It felt like something was hiding, something that knew they were coming. The fleet slowed down and shifted into a defensive formation. Human ships often moved with grace, but this time every single formation shift looked sharper, tighter, more calculated. The officers wanted to give the enemy nothing, no weakness, no opening, not even a small gap in the formation. Slowly, the sensor teams filtered through the strange energy spikes. And then the first piece of real evidence appeared. A drifting piece of metal twisted, burned, and all that remained of a coalition ship floated past the fleet. It moved silently, turning in slow motion, almost like it was trying to tell a story. The humans scanned it. Immediately, the results were unsettling. The damage didn't look like the kind caused by normal weapons. There were clean cuts too clean, like something had sliced straight through the hull without effort. The metal edges had no burn marks, no heat residue, no shatter patterns. It was as if the ship had been cut by invisible blades, sharper than anything the coalition had ever seen. The humans exchanged quiet looks. They didn't need words to understand what this meant. The enemy wasn't using traditional weapons. They were using something far more advanced, far more precise, but that wasn't what unsettled them the most. The scans revealed something else. The damage had been done in less than a second. That meant the enemy didn't just strike hard, they struck faster than most sensors could even detect. As the fleet pushed deeper into the war zone, they found more fragments. Some looked like melted plates. Others looked like they had simply evaporated. And some were so smooth and clean that it was difficult to believe they had been part of a warship at all. It was clear now why the coalition fleets had fallen so quickly. This enemy didn't fight like any known species. They didn't fire warning shots. They didn't disable ships. They didn't try to scare anyone away. They simply appeared, attacked, and destroyed everything in their path, and then the enemy finally showed itself. The first ship to spot them was a human scout vessel moving ahead of the main formation. It detected a cluster of metallic objects moving at incredible speed. They weren't shaped like normal ships. They had no visible engines, no cockpits, no living areas. They looked like giant pieces of dark metal floating in perfect harmony, each one glowing faintly with cold, blue lines. A scout relayed the visuals to the entire fleet. The moment humans saw the strange shapes, they understood something instantly. These weren't alien pilots. These were machines. The enemy wasn't a species, it was a fully automated war machine force. They weren't flying ships. They were the ships. Human officers studied their movement patterns closely. The machines moved like a pack, guided by a single shared mind. No hesitation, no disorder, no wasted energy. Every turn looked perfect. Every shift in position matched the readings humans had already collected. It was a frightening level of precision, but it also meant something important. If the machines relied only on logic, the humans could predict them. Humans didn't feel fear in the way many species did when facing such things. They felt something different: focus. This wasn't a creature with emotions or instincts. This wasn't a society with motives or culture. This was a threat that humans could analyze. And once humans understood a threat, they could defeat it. But the first encounter arrived before they could run more tests. The machines suddenly accelerated. One moment they were drifting like calm shadows. The next moment they were rushing forward like arrows released from a bow. The speed was so intense that even the human systems had trouble keeping up. But humans did not run, and they did not break formation. Instead, the fleet adjusted instantly. Shields activated in multiple layers. Weapons locked onto the approaching shapes. Pilots gripped their controls tightly, waiting for commands. Tactical teams watched the enemy patterns and prepared counter-maneuvers. And then it happened. The machines fired the first attack, but the attack didn't look like a beam or missile. It was a thin, almost invisible pulse, so sharp, so fast, that sensors caught it only after it passed. The pulse struck the outer shields of a human cruiser, causing the shield lines to flicker for a brief moment. But the humans had upgraded their shielding before entering the zone. The pulse didn't break through. Instead, it scattered across the shield surface and disappeared. The machines reacted instantly. Their formation shifted. They calculated new angles. They prepared their next shot. It was clear that they didn't show fear or confusion. They simply adapted. And that was the moment the human fleet understood the true danger. The machines weren't acting randomly. They were learning from every shot. The next few minutes felt like a silent test between two forces, one logical and cold, the other alive and prepared. The machines circled, watching the shield patterns, measuring energy output. Humans adjusted frequencies, shifted formations, and kept everything unpredictable. It felt like a game of strategy, except the losing side would vanish from existence. Then, from the center of the enemy formation, a larger machine emerged. It was shaped like a giant spearhead, sharp and smooth, with glowing lines pulsing across its sides like a heartbeat. It moved forward slowly, as if examining the human fleet. The humans locked every scanner onto it. The readings sent a chill through every ship. The machine wasn't just advanced. It was old ancient even. The metal structure contained elements rarely found in the modern galaxy. The energy core inside it was unlike anything the Coalition used. And the outer shell carried symbols that no species in the Council could recognize. This wasn't a new creation. This was something awakened. Something built long ago. Something designed for a purpose humans still didn't understand. Slowly, the humans started piecing together the truth. The Coalition hadn't discovered a new enemy. They had stumbled into the territory of ancient war machines built by a civilization long gone. These machines had simply been dormant, waiting for something to disturb them. And now that something had arrived, humans didn't know why the machines were active again. They didn't know what triggered them. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. These machines would not stop unless someone forced them to, and the only force ready to do that now was the human fleet. As the enemy machine spread out, preparing for a full attack, the humans realized something else, something that made their determination sharpen even more. The machines weren't moving randomly. They were surrounding the fleet, just like they had surrounded every Coalition ship before destroying them. They were following the same deadly pattern. The humans weren't just seeing the enemy. They were seeing exactly what had wiped out so many species so quickly. The machines began charging their energy lines. The hum of power vibrated across the war zone. The humans braced for impact. They knew a fight was coming, and it would begin in seconds. But unlike every species before them, the humans didn't back away. They didn't scatter. They didn't freeze. They stood there, ground. They had studied the enemy. They had prepared their defenses. And most importantly, they had something the machines did not: the ability to think beyond logic, the ability to adapt in ways no programming could predict, the ability to fight with emotion, instinct, and creativity. And that was the reason humanity came here to face the enemy. Everyone else couldn't. The humans watched the machine fleet charge up for the first major strike. They didn't flinch. They didn't panic. They simply waited, because they were ready. The enemy was finally revealed, and the real battle was about to begin. The moment the ancient machines finished charging their energy lines, the entire war zone seemed to hold its breath. Blue light ran across their metallic surfaces like lightning trapped inside metal veins. Every hum and vibration echoed through the human sensors, warning them that something powerful, something deadly, was about to be unleashed. But even as the enemy prepared to strike, the human fleet remained steady. Inside every ship, the crew waited calmly, watching their screens and trusting the training that had brought them here. They didn't shout, they didn't panic, and they didn't freeze. Instead, they worked like a single mind spread across thousands of bodies. The first wave of machine fire came in a sudden burst. Thin streams of energy shot across the darkness, moving faster than the eye could follow. They weren't random. They were aimed calculated to hit important points in the fleet formation, the kind of points that would normally break an armada apart. But humans had prepared for this exact moment. The shields activated before the energy beams reached them. The first few pulses hit and scattered into thousands of tiny sparks, lighting up space like stars breaking apart. The shields rippled but held strong. Human engineers had modified them to respond faster than usual, and that adjustment made all the difference. The enemy machines reacted immediately. They changed angles, adjusted their fire, and tested new patterns. They were learning, just as the humans expected. But the humans didn't wait for them to finish analyzing the shields. Instead, they made the first move. The human fleet shifted formation so quickly that even the machines paused for a fraction of a second. The large carriers moved backward, while the fast interceptors rushed forward. Heavy cruisers took the middle layer, while long-range ships positioned themselves strategically along the edges. The formation looked like a giant wave curling inward, ready to strike. A signal rippled through the fleet. Engage carefully. Strike smart. Don't waste energy. Human ships had one advantage the ancient machines didn't expect: creativity. Machines followed logic. Humans followed strategy. Machines improved piece by piece. Humans changed the entire approach in one moment if needed. The first human counterattack wasn't a full strike. It was a test. A small group of fast ships fired controlled bursts at the machine formation. The blasts weren't meant to destroy anything. They were meant to study how the machines turned, how they dodged, and how they responded to unfamiliar rhythms. The machines reacted exactly as the humans predicted. They shifted in perfect sync, calculating the angle of every incoming bolt. Their moves were smooth, sharp, and flawless, and that was the key. Their perfection made them predictable. Human tactical teams watched the reaction patterns, compared them with earlier movements, and found the first real clue. The machines always responded with the fastest and most efficient path. Humans, however, could act inefficiently on purpose, do something unexpected, or even choose a risky move if it helped in the long run. This difference, the ability to be unpredictable, gave humanity their first real opening, but they didn't strike yet. They needed more data. As the battle continued, the machines launched another wave of pulses. This time, they targeted 3 points in the formation. The pulses looked almost harmless, thin lines of bright light, but the scanners showed they carried enough power to cripple a medium-sized ship instantly. Once again, the human shields held. But the officers knew that the longer the machines analyzed their defenses, the more dangerous the next attack would become. Time wasn't on humanity's side. The machines would adapt completely if given enough minutes. That meant the humans had to break the pattern soon. In the command ship, strategy teams studied the motion of the enemy's spearhead, the larger machine that seemed to lead the others. It didn't fire as often. It didn't move as fast. It simply hovered, analyzing everything, collecting every detail. If it was transmitting instructions to the others, disrupting it could change the entire battle. But the humans needed to be certain. Before taking the risk, one of the human officers suggested something bold: send a group of decoy ships forward while the real strike team circled behind. It wasn't a logical move. It wasn't efficient. And for machines that read patterns based on logic, it was exactly the kind of action they wouldn't expect. The idea spread through the fleet instantly. Pilots prepared. Engineers fine-tuned their ships. The decoy group moved into position, flying forward with just enough aggression to draw attention. The machines reacted, like a wave responding to a stone thrown into water. They shifted their entire formation toward the decoys. Beams of energy shot out, cutting through the empty space around the ships. The decoys dodged quickly, not perfectly, not smoothly, but just enough to stay out of danger. The machines followed the slight mistakes instead of the real intention. That was the power of human unpredictability. While the machines chased the decoys, the real human ships angled around to target the large spearhead machine. They approached silently, controlling their engine signatures to avoid detection. For the first time, the ancient machine looked uncertain. It shifted a little slower, as if trying to process two different movements at once. The decoys in front, the real ships behind. It wasn't programmed for distractions. It wasn't designed for tricks. It was built for direct, efficient combat, and humans were refusing to give it what it wanted. The strike group got into range. They fired, but they didn't use their strongest weapons. They used precision beams, small but sharp, aimed at the machine's joints and energy ports. They wanted to see how it reacted before committing fully. The machine flared with blue light, absorbing the hits. But something unexpected happened. The light flickered for a split second. That tiny flicker told the humans everything they needed to know. The ancient machine had weaknesses. They weren't obvious. They weren't simple, but they existed. Before the humans could press the advantage, the machine retaliated. A sudden pulse of energy burst from its core, pushing the ships backward like a shockwave. Alarms rang, shields shook, but the ships stayed intact, and the humans learned something else. Every time the machine used that energy pulse, its lines dimmed afterward. It cost the machine power. It couldn't use it endlessly. The humans exchanged. Silent agreement across the fleet. They could win this fight. The decoy group pulled back. The entire fleet reformed. And the humans prepared for their first major strike. This time, the machines reacted differently. Instead of calm movements, they shifted rapidly from one pattern to another, like they were, struggling to decide which response was most efficient. Their patterns weren't as smooth. Their timing wasn't as perfect. The humans had introduced confusion, and that was far more dangerous to the machines than firepower. Human ships charged forward in a coordinated wave. Energy beams lit up the war zone, cutting through darkness like threads of white and blue. The machines responded with their own lines of fire, but their shots were just a little off, just enough to miss. The machines were losing their perfect rhythm. Human ships took small hits here and there, nothing serious, nothing dangerous. Shields flickered, alarms beeped, but the fleet stayed strong. Every pilot knew they were close to turning this battle around. The humans targeted the spearhead machine again, this time with heavier weapons. The blasts hit its surface, making the glowing lines dim and pulse irregularly. The machine tried to counterattack, but every move looked more desperate than the last. For the first time in the war zone, the humans saw a sign that the enemy could be pushed back. They had cracked the rhythm of the ancient machines. They had forced them to adapt too fast. And they had found the key to winning. But the battle wasn't over. Not yet. As the spearhead machine struggled, something strange happened. The space behind the machine rippled like a curtain of darkness shifting. More energy signatures appeared, faint but growing stronger. The humans realized instantly what they were seeing. Reinforcements that the ancient machines were calling more units from deeper in the war zone. The humans tightened their formation. They didn't back off. They didn't fall into fear. They simply prepared again. Because they weren't here to retreat. They were here to finish what every other fleet had failed to complete, and the next moments would decide whether the humans could truly break the enemy or whether the war zone would swallow them, just like the others. When the last enemy ship finally broke apart into silent dust, the war zone changed in a way no one expected. Moments earlier, the entire region had been filled with violent light, explosions, and the loud rumble of energy weapons. But now, everything fell quiet. It was the kind of silence that made even experienced officers stop and breathe slowly, unsure of what they had just witnessed. For the Galactic Coalition ships, watching from a safe distance, it was almost impossible to understand how the battle had ended so quickly. One moment the enemy was everywhere, pushing forward with complete confidence, and the next the entire mechanical fleet was gone. Not defeated slowly, not pushed back, not forced to retreat, simply erased by the arrival of humanity. Inside the Terran command ship, crew members monitored the battlefield with calm, steady focus. They checked every last reading to make sure the enemy was truly gone. Human ships stood firm in their formation, not drifting, not relaxing, not celebrating. They simply held position and continued scanning for danger, as if they were still expecting something else to appear. There was no shouting, no cheering, no dramatic remarks. Humans worked with the same quiet determination they had shown since the moment they entered the war zone. After a few minutes, a communication line opened from the Coalition flagship. The voice coming through sounded emotional, almost shaky. The speaker tried to thank humanity for saving them, for preventing the destruction of more worlds, for responding when others hesitated. But the Terran admiral answered in a steady and brief tone. The response was simple, almost blunt. The threat was neutralized, and the Coalition could now return to normal operations. There were no grand speeches, no requests for praise, no demands for recognition. The humans ended the call with the same focused professionalism they had carried through the entire mission. On the Coalition side, the officers looked at one another in confusion. They had expected some kind of victory moment, something dramatic that would show pride or excitement. But humanity didn't behave that way. Their fleet didn't fire off victory signals or mark the moment with traditional triumph. Their ships didn't flash colors or transmit celebratory codes. Instead, the Terran fleet simply began preparing to leave the war zone, as if this had been just another duty, another item on a long list of tasks. Some Coalition officers couldn't understand it. They had seen powerful empires in the past, but almost all of them demanded recognition after a victory. They wanted respect, attention, and political advantage. Humanity, on the other hand, acted like they didn't want anything at all. They appeared ready to quietly return home without even explaining how they had destroyed a threat that had defeated so many others. A few Coalition ships moved closer, keeping a respectful distance. Their captains opened private channels among themselves, whispering replays of the battle footage. They slowed it down, watched it again from different angles, and still couldn't fully understand what they had seen. Human ships moved together with unbelievable timing. Their weapons fired not in simple bursts, but in precise, calculated rhythms. It almost looked like the entire fleet shared one mind, one thought, one focus. Every movement had purpose, every shot had a target, and every decision came a moment faster than expected. One Coalition officer commented that it was almost frightening. Another said it was admirable. A third suggested humanity must have trained for battles like this for generations. And though no one said it directly, many of them wondered the same hidden question. How many threats had humanity already faced before joining the galactic community? Meanwhile, inside the Terran ships, the crew worked with methodical calm. They swept the area for leftover mines, scanned for hidden enemy signals, and mapped the remains of the battlefield. Their commanders didn't allow any ship to leave until the area was confirmed safe. Humans treated this cleanup phase with the same seriousness as the battle itself. They didn't take risks, they didn't rush, and they didn't assume victory until every sensor reading said so. It was their way finish the fight, then finish the responsibility that came after. When the scans were complete, the Terran admiral gave a simple order. The fleet shifted formation again, this time preparing a return route. Engines warmed, navigation paths were set, and every movement happened without confusion or delay. Coalition crews watching from afar felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, gratitude, admiration, and something else they didn't want to say out loud unease. Because the truth was clear, humanity had just displayed a level of military coordination beyond anything the Coalition had ever seen. As the Terran fleet prepared to jump, a final message arrived from the Coalition Council. It was longer, more formal, filled with thanks and promises of future cooperation. They hoped the humans would stay and discuss alliance reforms or new treaties. But the humans responded with polite distance. They appreciated the message, but they declined the extra discussions. The mission was over, and the fleet needed to return home. That was all. The moment the Terran ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, the Coalition Warzone felt strangely empty. For a long time, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the Coalition captains began sharing their thoughts. Some expressed that humanity had earned unmatched respect. Others admitted that they finally understood why the Galactic Council had always been cautious around Earth. Humans didn't fight for glory, they fought to end threats. And they ended them with a speed and precision that didn't seem normal. Whispers spread quickly across Coalition networks. People began to talk about the human fleet's silence, their lack of celebration, their calm professionalism. The story of the battle traveled through different species, each adding their own observations. Some said humans must have faced something similar before. Others claimed humanity held knowledge or training they hadn't shared with the rest of the galaxy. Some believed humanity simply prepared for every possible danger because of their long, difficult past. Many species knew Earth's history had been filled with challenges, natural, political, and environmental. And those challenges had shaped humans into a species that didn't take threats lightly. As the days passed, researchers examined the battle footage with more advanced systems. They studied the way human ships shifted formation instantly, how their weapons changed output mid-battle, how their shielding adapted to enemy fire faster than expected. One analyst suggested that humanity's real strength wasn't technology, but mindset. They treated every threat as something that must be handled quickly, efficiently, and with minimal loss of life. To them, hesitation was dangerous, and long battles were unnecessary. They preferred solutions that ended problems before they had time to grow. In several Coalition worlds, ordinary citizens watched the battle summary broadcast. They saw the Terran fleet enter the war zone without fear, unleash their counterattack, and leave without demanding anything. Many viewers were surprised. They had heard rumors about humanity being unpredictable or emotional, but this battle showed a different image. Humans were controlled, prepared, and trained in a way that made them reliable allies, but also frightening opponents. As for the Terran fleet, their journey home was quiet. Inside the ships, crew members cleaned their stations, stored equipment, and filed reports. No one bragged or exaggerated what happened. They didn't talk about being heroes or saviors. Their focus was on the work ahead, the next assignment, and the responsibilities waiting on Earth. For them, the battle wasn't something to celebrate. It was something to understand, learn from, and then leave behind. When they arrived back at Earth's orbital stations, there were no massive celebrations. People welcomed them with respect, of course, but humans didn't build their culture around victories. They built it around survival, growth, and duty. Officers briefed their superiors. Crews went through recovery procedures, and life moved on. But across the galaxy, the story never faded. Every Coalition leader remembered how fast the mechanical enemy had been destroyed. Every captain remembered the precision of the Terran fleet. Every soldier remembered how humans worked in silence, without fear or hesitation. And the unspoken truth settled deep in the minds of many species. Humanity didn't win because they were aggressive or reckless. They won because they were ready. Ready in ways others didn't fully understand. Ready because their history had taught them to prepare for the worst. Ready because they had faced disaster after disaster and survived each one. Ready because they believed that when danger appears, you don't panic, you act. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. Some saw them as protectors. Some saw them as a warning. But every species agreed on one thing. The day humanity's battle fleet entered the war zone changed everything. And the speed with which they ended the enemy showed a simple, powerful truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were calm when others panicked. They were prepared when others hesitated. And when they decided to act, they acted with a force that left the entire galaxy in quiet, humbled awe.